If you've ever lain awake with a pressure in your chest you couldn't name, as if somewhere, beyond sight, a quiet voice were reading your name, this is for you. If the world's noise has grown louder, while something even louder rises inside you, a clean, stubborn hunger for truth, for purity, for purpose, you're not imagining it. You're answering a roll call. Most people treat every door like any other. A few feel a hand on the handle before the hinge even moves. They sense timings they didn't schedule, patterns they didn't design, a nearness they didn't orchestrate. They aren't better than anyone. They're being prepared. And preparation feels different. It sets you apart before it gathers you, prunes you before it sends you, breaks the idol of applause long before it entrusts you with influence. If that sounds uncomfortably familiar, lean in. What you name strange may be sacred. The early weather of a promise refusing to miss its appointed hour. I'm speaking to the part of you that is tired of hype, but hungry for holy. You've seen predictions with fireworks and no fruit, voices that can rouse a crowd but cannot carry character, timelines crafted to provoke fear rather than mature faith. That noise fractures trust. It makes you flinch when you hear prophecy, as if hope itself were a scam. There is a steadier way. The ancient promise never needed spectacle to be true. It moves like dawn, silent, precise, inevitable. It doesn't beg to be believed. It asks to be recognized. When Scripture speaks of a marked remnant, it doesn't say exclusive, it says trusted, not crowned for status, but sealed for service. Not chosen to escape, but chosen to persevere and help others persevere. Even this title, announcement of the 144,000 chosen ones will happen, is not bait to chase a number. It's an invitation to notice a pattern. A people set apart not to hoard light, but to hold it steady when the wind rises. Let's name the ache plainly. You have felt different, and difference can be lonely. Friends who once understood now shrug at conviction. Entertainment that used to numb tastes like sand. Doors that flattered your ego are closing, while smaller, quieter doors, unimpressive to everyone else, keep opening to test your integrity when nobody's watching. You wake at inconvenient hours with that strange blend of urgency and peace, like a soldier who knows the shape of the road but still awaits orders. And yes, you've wondered if you're inventing it. Who are you to imagine you could be part of something so old and vast? Hear this. Heaven has never required famous names to keep its promises, only faithful ones. The seal isn't celebrity. The seal is custody of truth when it costs, of compassion when it's tedious, of courage when it's risky, and of humility when it's tempting to believe your assignment makes you more than those you're sent to serve. Stay with me, and I will offer something better than sensation, clarity. Not a date to argue about, but a path you can walk without performing. You'll learn to discern the difference between spiritual adrenaline and authentic guidance, to hear in the night without losing wisdom in the day, to endure hidden years that look like delay, but are really the tight stitching that keeps a calling from tearing when the wind changes. We'll name the tests that always patrol the last mile: power without surrender, purity without fear, pride dressed as destiny, and how to pass them without theatrics. We'll trace what a marked life does in real neighborhoods, at real tables, under real pressure, how it steadies panicked hearts, speaks clean truth without cruelty, and refuses to compete with the very people it was sent to strengthen. And we'll keep the language simple enough for a child to follow. Because truth that cannot be made simple is usually truth we have not yet learned to live. For the one listening who feels too small, too stained, or too late, hear this with both ears. The remnant has always been formed from unlikely people. Shepherds more than kings, midwives more than magistrates, women whose names were almost erased, and men so ordinary history would have missed them if heaven hadn't written them down. If you can still blush at your own weakness, you're already safer than the gifted who can't. If you still cry when you see someone carried by a storm you once survived, you're already nearer the seal than the clever who use truth to win arguments instead of wash feet. The mark is not ink, it is alignment. A heart that says yes when noise says wait. A mind that chooses obedience over outcomes. A body willing to carry small assignments without demanding large audiences. In a frightened world, that kind of person is a miracle. Here is my plain promise, and I make it with fear and trembling, because I intend to keep it. I won't scare you into attention or flatter you into fantasy. I'll speak like family, direct, kind, specific. When we talk about dreams and night signals, we will test them for peace and fruit. When we talk about boldness, we'll pair it with gentleness. When we talk about being marked, we'll remember. Ink without character is just a costume. As we walk, your breath will deepen, not because I'm impressive, but because truth untangles the throat. The loneliness will lift, not because crowds arrive, but because you recognize your place in a lineage so steady it can carry your weight without breaking. Before we step into the deeper work, do 2 small things that will change how this journey lands in you. Subscribe now so the next chapters reach you at the right time. Consistency is part of calling, and this keeps us moving in step. And in the comments, write sealed or simply 144000. Not as a boast, not as a club password, but as a quiet agreement. I choose alignment over applause, assignment over adrenaline, to be trustworthy with whatever light I am given. That one word will become a reminder to your own heart on days you doubt what you once knew clearly. Breathe once, slowly. Listen to the room. The headlines will keep shouting, but the roll call that woke you does not shout. It whispers your name and asks a gentle question. How does a remnant recognize itself? And what does the seal truly mean in a life like yours? Stay close. The answer is nearer than you think. And when you hear it, the road ahead will stop looking like a maze and start reading like a map. Calling doesn't crash in like thunder. It speaks your name in a quiet room. If you've felt that low, steady pull, the sense that you're being prepared rather than promoted, you're closer than you think. Chosen doesn't mean superior. Chosen means responsible. The remnant isn't a pedestal. It's a stewardship. You know you're nearing it when pride starts to itch, when applause stops tasting sweet, when the compliment that used to lift you now sends a question into your chest. Am I living the truth I'm saying? That is how calling removes the costume before it trusts you with the role. Inside, signs begin to travel together. You become unusually sensitive to truth, even when truth costs you. You grieve deception, starting with your own. You hunger for clean motives more than spotless optics. Purity and justice pull on you at the same time, like 2 hands guiding your shoulders into alignment. Your attention sharpens around small obediences. A promise kept that no one will check. A tone corrected that almost slipped by. Money returned that didn't really matter. None of it is minor. This is the first alphabet of the mark. At night you wake with urgency and peace sharing the same ribcage. An ache to be ready paired with the sense that a patient hand is already preparing you. Outside, the echoes match. Doors that flatter the ego close softly but firmly. New doors open that sharpen spirit, not image. Hidden assignments arrive, the kind that grow compassion when nobody's watching. Your circles change. Some friends drift because you no longer trade in the same currency. Others appear who value clean decisions over clever impressions. Work starts to feel like worship, and worship like work. Steady, unshowy, faithful. What used to numb you now leaves a film on your tongue. Simple beauty hits you harder. Boundaries get clearer. Anger slows. Repair comes faster. None of this makes headlines. That's why it's holy. Because counterfeit urgency is loud, you learn to test what you feel with questions a child could carry. What is the tone, panic or peace? What is the fruit, confusion or clarity, vanity or humility, secrecy or light? What is the direction, towards service or towards self? If a nudge leaves you smaller, meaner or hiding, set it down. If it leaves you steadier and kinder, even while asking for courage, pick it up. Real calling almost never inflates you. It roots you. And the more you obey in small things, the less noise you need from the world to know you're on track. Preparation has a geography. Wilderness before visibility. Hidden years are not wasted years. They are the stitching that keeps a mantle from tearing when the wind rises. Expect obscurity to do its work. Expect misunderstood motives and delayed answers. Expect discipline to feel like loss at first and love eventually. Build simple rhythms that make a life sturdy. A moment each day to watch and be watched. Prayer, stillness, breath. A rehearsal of what is true until your mouth can find it on hard days. Honest work done well, especially when unseen. A way of walking that shows character under pressure. How you treat waiters, how you treat schedules, how you keep promises, how you keep your own word. The seal does not rest on charisma, it rests on custody. If this sounds ordinary, that is because remnant work is. The extraordinary rests on ordinary beams, integrity when unseen, compassion when tired, courage when cleverness would be cheaper. Over time, different stops feeling like exile and starts feeling like a fingerprint. You catch yourself smiling at temptations that used to own you. Your spine lengthens when you tell the truth quickly. You need less applause to breathe. You sense, without a crowd to confirm it, that you are being made ready, not for status, but for service that steadies others when their sky goes dark. And as that readiness deepens, a new question rises, quiet but insistent. If calling is the summons, what is the seal that keeps it steady when the storm finally arrives? How does a life wear it without turning it into a costume? Stay close. We're going there next. People picture a mark as paint on skin, a sign you can point to and say, there, proof. But the seal that matters doesn't sit on the surface. It settles inside. It's less like ink and more like a watermark, subtle until you hold it to the light, undeniable when you do. The seal is alignment. It's what happens when your heart, your mind, and your actions agree to live under a higher authority than mood or crowd. A child can grasp it like this. It's a necklace you can't take off, but it hangs on your heart, not your neck. It reminds you who you belong to when the world tries to make you forget. Adults can hear it like this. The seal is the quiet yes that outlives temptation. The yes that keeps choosing truth when lies would be easier. Mercy when anger would feel stronger. Humility when applause tries to turn your head. Ink without character is costume. The seal rests on character until character becomes a home it loves to live in. If calling is the voice that invites you, the seal is the touch that steadies you. It forms where no camera can watch. At the small fork in the road where you return money no one would miss. Where you keep a promise no one will track. Where you speak gently to someone who can give you nothing back. In those tiny, unseen choices, the seal presses deeper, like a signet warming soft wax. Over time, an impression appears. Conviction that won't bend truth into comfort. Compassion that refuses to use people as props. Courage that won't confuse volume with strength. And custody, the dignity of keeping faith with what you say when no one is checking. Truly marked people grow less afraid as they grow more sealed. The seal reduces noise. When you already know whom you answer to, 1,000 opinions shrink into weather reports, useful to glance at, unfit to steer by. You can feel the seal at work in 3 kinds of moments. Power asks, will you control or will you serve? The sealed can take the lowest seat without becoming smaller inside. They handle authority like a borrowed tool and return it clean. Pain asks, will you harden or stay human? The sealed let sorrow teach tenderness rather than suspicion. They become safe places, not sharp ones. Praise asks, will you believe you are the point? The sealed bless encouragement without swallowing the bait. Gratitude passes through them without becoming a throne. In each of these tests, the seal is not loud, but it is stubborn. It keeps whispering, remember who you are. Remember who you're for. Remember who you answer to. Until remembering becomes reflex. Because our world sells image, the seal will often look unimpressive at first. It will nudge you toward a truer sentence that costs you a shortcut. It will pull you to repair a tone instead of defending a point you could have won. It will ask you to leave a room that flatters your ego but endangers your soul, and enter one that stretches your integrity and strengthens your courage. From the outside, it may look like you are missing opportunities. From the inside, something stronger than opportunity begins to grow, peace, the kind that deepens your breath and returns your appetite for what is good. That peace is how the sealed are led, not by panic demanding instant answers, not by grand visions that collapse under their own weight, by the simple gravity of the next right step taken in the right spirit. When you're unsure whether a mark is real or only costume, listen to its tone, look at its fruit, and check its direction. The true seal speaks with calm authority, never shrill superiority. It produces clarity that makes you kinder and braver at the same time, not confusion that makes you harsh or afraid. And it turns you outward, to serve family, work, neighborhood, and those with less, rather than inward toward a spotlight that always needs feeding. Under that kind of guidance, you won't feel inflated. You'll feel anchored. Even a child can sense it. The sealed person is the one everyone wants nearby when the storm hits, not because they add lightning, but because they bring shelter. None of this means the sealed never stumble. It means they return faster. They apologize like builders, honest, specific, and on time, because the goal isn't to win, it's to strengthen the house. They carry secrets the way a surgeon carries a scalpel, carefully and only for healing. They treat resources like river water, meant to flow where thirst lives rather than stagnate in private ponds. They are slow to broadcast goodness because they remember what they were without grace. And as the seal runs deeper, they welcome accountability, knowing a calling without correction turns into a headline without fruit. The world might call it too much. Heaven calls it trustworthy. Think of the seal as a tuning fork held against your life. When your choices resonate with it, the note rings clear. When you betray it, the note goes dull. You don't need mystical ears to tell the difference, just honesty and the humility to start again by noon when you misstep at 10. Slowly the resonance spreads, your speech simplifies, your boundaries hold without hardening into walls. Your kindness grows teeth and your courage grows tenderness, until even those who don't share your beliefs begin to trust your presence. That is how the marked serve a frightened world, not by shouting dates into the air, but by living days that make courage contagious. Here is the part that surprises most people early on. The deeper the seal, the more likely you are to be kept hidden for a while. Not hidden as punishment, hidden as preparation. Wax takes time to cool. Roots take time to grip. The seal wants a life strong enough to carry it without cracking. So do not despise the quiet season, when most of the work is interior and the audience is God. The same hand that presses the ring into soft wax is patient enough to let it set. When it is set, the imprint won't smudge under heat and the work ahead won't break what you're becoming, which leads to the most merciful question we can ask next. If the seal steadies the calling, how do the hidden years build the unshakable years, and what does wilderness training look like for those being made ready? Wilderness always comes before any unveiling worth trusting. It feels like being tucked away on purpose. Fewer invitations, smaller rooms, long stretches where only your conscience is watching. This is not demotion. It is devotion. Heaven leads you where crowds can't follow, so you can hear in a register their noise can't drown. It is not a desert meant to starve you, but a garden without witnesses where roots learn to drink from deeper water than applause. Here you learn the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness hisses, "You are forgotten." Solitude answers, "You are being formed." When that truth settles in your chest, the heat stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like a kiln. And kilns are not cruel. They turn clay into vessels. In hidden seasons, tasks grow smaller, while meaning grows larger. You sweep a floor and notice the prayer in the rhythm. You correct your tone before anyone complains, because integrity matters even when nobody claps. You return what isn't yours, keep promises no one will track, and speak gently to people who can give you nothing in return. These choices press the seal deeper, like a signet warming soft wax. Some who loved your sparkle drift away. Others with eyes trained for quiet light draw near. Not to promote you, but to walk beside you while your bones learn a steadier strength. Scripture becomes bread instead of decor. Work becomes worship instead of performance. You stop trying to earn a stage and start learning to be trustworthy on one. Delay is the wilderness's favorite teacher. When promotion ignores your calendar, you discover whether you loved the giver or the gifts. When the platform stays small, you find out if you wanted to serve or to be seen serving. Unanswered prayers test whether faith was a slogan or a stance. Some days you will sing. Other days you will hang on with both hands and whisper, "Help, both are worship here." Even temptation changes its costume. It stops promising fame and starts promising shortcuts. No one will know. Haven't you waited long enough? Wilderness training teaches you to give your soul good weight. Keep the promise. Forgive before you're asked. Choose rest before fatigue makes you reckless. Pride pays dearly for shortcuts. Peace becomes inexpensive once pride has paid. When a perfect door slams shut, resist the urge to rewrite your identity around your circumstances. Return to first things. Stand still until your breath turns honest. Speak one true sentence about who you belong to and repeat it until panic lets go. Do one faithful task so your obedience is more than a mood. Call a voice that loves your future more than your feelings and borrow their calm. These unglamorous moves build a reflex public life will demand later, the ability to be trusted with both noise and silence. Hiddenness is mercy. Attention applied too early can warp your gait forever. Obscurity protects you from the violence of premature visibility. You practice giving God the credit in kitchens and carpools so you won't be tempted to steal it later on stages. Encouragement passes through you without swelling your head. Criticism passes by you without shrinking your heart. You become the kind of steady presence frightened people feel safe near. And when unveiling comes, and it will not as a single drum roll but as a series of faithful yeses, you won't need visibility to prove anything. You will treat influence like a borrowed tool and return it clean. Picture a seed beneath the soil, darkness above, pressure all around, no audience to applaud the hidden work. Everything that matters is happening where eyes cannot go. Fibers strengthen, direction is chosen, timing hums. Then, when season and weather conspire, a quiet green breaks the crust. No trumpet, no headline, just life refusing to stay small. That is the wilderness. That is you. Your task is not to force spring. Your task is to grow roots that will not let go when spring arrives, and spring does arrive. Before leaves unfurl, the wilderness insists on one last craft, hearing at night and walking it in the day. You learn to tell the difference between a nudge that brings peace and a noise that breeds panic. You translate whispers into grounded daylight steps. Once you can do that, the road ahead stops feeling like guesswork and starts reading like guidance, and the years no one saw become the reason the years everyone sees will not make you fall. When it began, it was only a whisper. A name spoken in a quiet room, a sense that someone who knew where you'd been still trusted where you could go. From that moment, you learned to name the ache without shame. You have felt different, and difference can be lonely, but the loneliness was never a verdict. It was the early weather of belonging. You discovered that chosen doesn't mean superior. It means responsible. The mark was never a costume for crowds. It was a watermark pressed into the heart, invisible until held to the light. It showed up as conviction when pretending would have been easier, as compassion when impatience felt justified, as courage when silence would have protected your image, and as humility when applause tried to turn your head. Ink can be forged. Resonance cannot. As resonance deepened, panic lost its jurisdiction. People who already know whom they answer to do not need the world to shout their names to remember who they are. Then came the hidden years. The kiln no one photographs. Invitations thinned, rooms grew smaller, and the mirrors grew true. It would have been easy to misread that quiet as demotion, and let impatience bargain for shortcuts that always charge double later. But you stayed. You kept a promise no one would track. You repaired a tone before anyone complained. You spoke gently to someone who had nothing to offer you back. Work became worship. Worship became work, steady, unshowy, faithful. Faith stopped being an opinion you held and became a way you stood on mornings when the horizon moved slow. Encouragement began to pass through you without swelling your head. Criticism began to pass by you without shrinking your heart. You forgave before you were asked. You chose rest before fatigue made you reckless. You preferred truth over drama, even when truth refused to meet your deadline. None of these choices trended. All of them trained you for the weight of what's next. Listen closely, and you can hear how differently your life sounds now. The old reflex to perform has lost its bite. Shortcuts look small against the long road you intend to travel. Different no longer feels like exile. It feels like a fingerprint. You recognize that prophecy fulfilled through a remnant is not spectacle designed to gather fans. It is service designed to steady families, neighborhoods, and workplaces when headlines make hands shake. The marked weren't made to hoard light. They were made to hold it steady when the wind comes hard. That steadiness never arrives with one trumpet blast. It arrives as 1,000 consistent choices, a softened tone, a boundary kept, a secret carried for healing, a resource released, where thirst lives. Slowly the watermark becomes witness, and witness becomes refuge. People who don't share your beliefs start to trust your presence, not because you are loud, but because you are safe. There will still be days when the ground feels uncertain, when old ghosts insist that slowness equals failure and obscurity equals being forgotten. On those days, speak the language you already learned. Return to the single sentence that tells the truth about who you belong to and why you're here. Repeat it until your breath lengthens and your shoulders drop. Choose one faithful act you can finish before noon. Send the apology, make the call, keep the boundary, write the line, and let that act become a hinge that swings the heavier door of your day. If fear knocks, answer with clarity. If pride whispers, answer with gratitude. If weariness settles, answer with rest you don't have to earn. This isn't romantic advice. It's sturdy instruction for those who intend to carry hope without becoming brittle. And when you stumble, and you will, refuse the lie that a stumble cancels a seal. Return quickly. Name what happened without embroidery or excuse. Own your part without hurting yourself to prove it. Offer a repair you can keep. Re-aim. The point of being marked is not to prove you never fall. It is to prove by practice that you rise in fewer breaths and with softer hands. Every practiced return engraves trust deeper into the beams of the house you're building. Over time, you'll do calmly what once required a miracle, and you'll recognize in that calm the signature of the one who began this work in you. So what should you expect as the days unfold? Not a crown that separates you from ordinary life, but a calling that consecrates it. Breakfast tables that become altars because kindness tells the truth there. Ordinary jobs that become assignments because integrity is guarded there. Sidewalk conversations that become interventions because courage and gentleness meet there. The seal does not deliver you from the world. It delivers you to it. Clear-eyed, open-handed, unafraid to serve where stage lights will never reach. When storms gather, you will not add lightning. You will bring shelter. When deception spreads, you will not wield truth like a weapon. You will carry it like medicine. When panic tries to race a room, your breath will slow it, and people will steady simply because you did not forget whom you answer to. So take one more slow breath. Feel how your chest remembers what the mind sometimes forgets. You are not lost in a maze. You are being led by a map. The watermark is already there. The kiln has already begun its work. The seed under the soil is already pushing fibers against the dark. When the season turns, quietly, precisely, inevitably, you won't need a trumpet to tell you. You'll simply rise into what you've been becoming all along, and the world around you will be a little less frightened because you did. The whisper has become a witness, and the witness will become a shelter. Keep walking. The map is in your breath.